Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Chapter 7, Part 2, the final part of our story, which is The Firework Maker's Daughter by Philip Pullman. And I'm going to read you the very last part of the story today, carrying on from where we left off at the end of yesterday. Now, I do want to say a big thank you to Mina May, who sent me a lovely card and a lovely letter saying how much that she's enjoyed the story, and she's really been listening to it all the way through. So thank you for that. That's really, really lovely. But I'm going to carry on today with the very last part of our story. So, Chapter 7, Part 2 of The Firework Maker's Daughter by Philip Pullman. First, there came a series of slow, dull explosions like the beat of a muffled drum. Everything was dark. Then a red light shivered downwards, leaving a trail of red sparks hanging in the air like a crack opening in the night. The solemn drum beats got louder and louder, and everyone sat very still, holding their breath, because of the irresistible feeling that something was about to happen. Then it did. Out of the red crack in the night, a great cascade of brilliant red, orange and yellow lava seemed to pour down and spread out like the carpet of fire in the grotto. Lila couldn't resist glancing up swiftly at Dr. Puffinflash, Signor Scorcini and Colonel Sparkington, and saw them all watching wide-eyed like little children. When the lava carpet had flowed down almost to the edge of the lake, the speed of the drumbeat got faster, and sharp bangs and cracks beat the air between them. And suddenly, dancing as he had in the grotto, Razvani himself seemed to be there, whirling and stamping and laughing for joy in play of the eternal fire. Both Lila and Lachlan forgot everything else and seized each other's hands and danced as well. Never had they produced such a display. No matter what happened, it was worth it. Everything was worth it for a moment of joy like this. They laughed and danced for happiness. But their fire was not Razvani's, of course, and it couldn't last forever. The great red firework demon burned himself out, and the last of the red lava poured slowly into the lake. And then the little white lotus boats, now scattered over the water like stars in the sky, flared up and burnt more brightly than ever for a moment before all going out all at once. And then there was silence. It was a silence that got longer and longer, until Lila could hardly bear it, and she gripped Lachlan's hand so tightly it nearly cracked. And then she thought it was all over. Lachlan was doomed. Everything was ruined. There came a mighty yell from Colonel Sparkington. "Yee-haw!" he cried, waving his hat, and "Bravissimo!" shouted Signor Scorcini, clapping his hands above his head, and "Hock, hock, hock!" roared Dr. Puffinflash, seizing the cymbals from his bombarden organ mitts and spark and pumpen in order to clap more loudly. The audience, not to be out-applauded by the visiting firework makers, joined in with such a roar and a stamping and a clapping and a thumping of one another on the back and a whistling and a shouting that 438 doves roosting in a tree 10 miles away woke up and said, "Did you hear that?" Of course, the court official timing the applause had to give up. It was obvious to everyone who had won, and Lachlan and Lila went up to the royal platform where the king was waiting to present the prize. "I keep my word," the king said quietly. "Lachlan, you are free. Take this prize, the pair of you, and enjoy the festival." Hardly knowing what was happening, Lila and Lachlan wandered back to the darkness of the firing area under the trees. And he might have been going to say something, and she might have spoken too, but suddenly the air was filled with the sound of a mighty trumpet. "It's Hamlet!" said Lila. Look, he's excited about something. A moment later, they saw what the elephant had seen, and Lila clapped her hands for joy. A little figure came strolling onto the grass in front of the royal platform and bowed elegantly to the king. It was Chulak. Your Majesty, he said, and everyone stopped to hear what he was going to say. In honour of your great wisdom and generosity to all your subjects, and in celebration of your many glorious years on the throne, and in the hope of many even more glorious ones ahead, and as a tribute to the splendour of your courage and your dignity, and in recognition, he's on the verge of being cheeky, Lachlan said as Chulak went on. I can see the king tapping his foot. That's a bad sign. So, your Majesty, Chulak finished, I have the honour to present to you a group of the finest musicians you have ever heard, who will sing a selection of vocal gems for your delight. Your Majesty, my lords, ladies and gentlemen, Rambash's Melody Boys. I don't believe it, said Lila, but she had to, because there were Rambash's ex-pirates in person, wearing smart scarlet jackets and tartan sarongs, and Rambashi himself, beaming all over his broad face, gave a deep bow and prepared to conduct them. But before he could begin, there was an interruption. One of the dancing girls who had accompanied the royal procession from the palace suddenly squealed and cried, Chang! And one of the Melody Boys held out his arms and cried, Lotus Blossom! What did he say? Said Lachlan. Locust Bottom? The young couple ran to each other with their arms outstretched, but stopped, embarrassed as they realised everyone was watching. Well, go on, said the king. You might as well. So they kissed, shyly, and everyone cheered. And now I'd like an explanation, please, said the king. I was a carpenter, your Majesty, said Chang, and I thought I ought to seek my fortune before I asked Lotus Blossom to marry me. So I went off and sought it, and that's what I'm doing here, your Majesty. Well, you better start singing then, said the king. So Chang ran back to the Melody Boys, and Rambashi counted them in, and they began to sing a close harmony song called Down by the Old Irrawaddy. Oh, they're very good, aren't they? Said Lachlan. I'm amazed, said Lila. After all the trouble they've had finding the right thing to do, who would have thought it? The song came to an end, and the king led the applause. While Rambashi was announcing the next, Lila went to talk to Chulak and found him stroking Hamlet's trunk. The elephant looked happy, but of course he couldn't say so without everyone around. Have you heard? Said Chulak. Hamlet's going to get married. Oh, well done, by the way. We heard the racket they made when you won. I always knew you would. And I've got my job back. Hamlet cuffed him gently around the head. So Frangipani said yes, said Lila. Congratulations, Hamlet. I'm so pleased. What made her change her mind? Me, said Chulak. I went and told her all about his gallant deeds up on Mount Merapi, and she was conquered. Actually, she said she'd loved him all the time, but she hadn't liked to say so. Old Uncle Rambashi's doing well, isn't he? The audience was clapping and cheering as Rambashi announced the next song. When the Melody Boys were singing and swaying to Save the Last Mango for Me, Lila wandered back to Lachlan, who was deep in talk with the 3 other firework makers. They all stood up politely and asked her to join them. I was just congratulating your pa on that mighty fine display, said Colonel Sparkington. And half the credit goes to you, missy. That trick with the little itty-bitty boats that all went out at once, that's a Lulu. How'd you work that stunt? So Lila told them all about the delayed action fuses, because there are no secrets among true artists. And Dr. Puffnflash told them the art of pink fire, and Signor Scorchini told them how he made the octopus's legs wave, and they all talked for hours and liked one another enormously. And very late, when they were all extremely tired, and even Rambashi's Melody Boys had run out of songs to sing, Lila and Lachlan found themselves alone in the great garden, on the grass, under the warm stars. And Lachlan cleared his throat and looked embarrassed. "Lila, my dear," he said, "I've an apology to make." "Whatever for?" "Well, you see, I should have trusted you. I brought you up as a firework maker's daughter. I should have expected you to want to be a firework maker yourself. After all, you have the 3 gifts. "Oh, yes, the 3 gifts. Razvani asked if I had them, and I didn't know, but then he said I must have brought them after all. And what with rushing back to the city and preparing the display and worrying about whether we've managed to save your life, I forgot all about them, and I still don't know what they are." "Well, my dear, did you see the ghosts?" said Lachlan. "Yes, I did. They didn't bring the gifts and they failed. But what are the 3 gifts?" "They are what all firework makers must have. They are equally important, and 2 of them are no good without the 3rd. The first one is talent, and you have that, my dear. The second has many names: courage, determination, willpower. It's what made you carry on climbing the mountain when everything seemed hopeless." Lila was silent for a moment and then said, "And what is the 3rd?" "Simply luck," he said. "It's what gave you good friends like Chulak and Hamlet and brought them to you in time. Those are the 3 gifts, and you took them and offered them to Razvani as a firework maker should, and he gave you the royal sulphur in exchange." "But he didn't." "Yes, he did. But he said it was an illusion." "In the eyes of Razvani, no doubt it is. But us human beings call it wisdom. You can only gain that suffering and risk by taking the journey to Mount Merapi. It's what the journey is for. Each of our friends, the other firework makers, has made his own journey in a similar way. And so has Rambashi. So you see, you didn't come home empty-handed, Lila. You did bring the royal sulphur." Lila thought of Hamlet and Frangipani now happily engaged, and she thought of Chulak restored to his job and Chang and Lotus Blossom restored to each other. She thought of Rambashi and the Melody Boys, happily snoring in the Hotel Intercontinental, dreaming of the triumphant show business career that lay ahead of them. She thought of the other firework makers and how they'd welcomed her as one of their own. And then she realised what she'd learned. She suddenly saw that Dr. Puffinflash loved his pink fire, and Signor Squarcini loved his octopus, and Colonel Sparkington loved his funny moon people. To make good fireworks, you have to love them. Every little sparkler or crackle dragon. That was it. You had to put love into your fireworks, as well as all the skill you had. And Dr. Puffinflash's pink fire really was very pretty. I mean, if they combined some of that with a little glimmer juice and some of the doubling back powder they'd never found a use for, they might be able to... She laughed and turned to Lachlan. "Now I see," she said. And so it was that Lila became a firework maker. The end. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as I enjoyed reading it. And maybe, if you liked it and you want to hear some more, I'll read some more stories to you another time. If you have a story that you would like me to read, then perhaps you could pop a suggestion on the Twitter feed and I'll happily try and get some videos done and read it to you. But I hope that you're okay at home and that you're having a good time with your families and you're being good. And hopefully it won't be too long before we see each other again. Take care. Stay safe. Stay home. Bye-bye now. Bye, everybody.